So how do we deal with this growing pile of debt in the U.S. and what is the way out? Joining us is Douglas Holtz-Eakin. He's president of the American Action Forum. We can look again to the example of Japan to know it's not necessarily inflationary. We can probably expand government debt a lot more than we have even now. But at what point do we worry about next steps and paying it down and all of that?
Well, I think certainly there should be no hesitation to continue to borrow to address the needs of the crisis and to support the economy. That's the top priority, both the public health mission and the economic support mission. We're on track to lose 10% of GDP in the second quarter. The CARES Act and things around it borrowed 10% of GDP. So that's a Band-Aid that gets us to the summer, but there's still a lot of work to be done to get the economy back on track. So that mission, no one should hesitate to do. Past that, there is a moment somewhere in 2023, 4, 5, when looking forward, the federal budget will not only continue to be on an unsustainable trajectory, it'll be jumping off a much higher point because of all the borrowing. And a minimal condition for a nation is to be able to stabilize your debts relative to GDP so that you have a sustainable budget. That will require a lot of work on the part of Congress. And that's the moment when this bill really comes due. Politically, it'll be hard to raise revenue, control spending, and, that's been a conversation they've tried to avoid in Washington for a long time.
Well, but I mean, there might be some logic to it, right? Because what we've learned is that whole idea of stabilizing debt, GDP is minimal, it doesn't really count for anything. It's just something people say to make them feel good.
Well, it does count for something. We've seen, a Portugal, we've seen a Greece get into a sovereign debt crisis. So it can happen if you never stabilize your debts. The U.S. certainly isn't close to that moment. But just because you're not having a crisis doesn't mean you're doing great. If you don't stabilize debt relative to GDP, you will ultimately push this problem somewhere else, whether it's driving out private investment and harming economic growth, whether it's crowding out exports and forcing us to borrow more from abroad. Those are costs that we would incur on a continuous basis. And sometimes it doesn't show up as inflation, but it does show up as financial instability. So there are good reasons not to make this problem worse.
Yeah, I guess, though, all of those reasons probably really start to matter a long, long time from now. And growth, in a way, trumps all. And that was one of your points anyhow, is that, you can grow your way out of it. It's the same as if you had, household debts, and the best way to pay them off is by growing your income as much as possible. So, you got to make sure that you don't hurt your income earning ability in the long run because you're choosing things now to pay off debt that actually you'd be better off not doing right now.
Yeah, it's the mirror image of the observation that former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers made that Steve Leisman mentioned, right? Right now, we want to contribute to the growth of the economy because to not is to actually make the problem much worse. So we need to do that. But ultimately, that reverses, and by harming the economy, you make it harder to stabilize the government debt. So, right now, no worries about the borrowing. In the future, much more discipline necessary.
I think a lot of it will be dictated by the campaign trail and by, this current and then future presidential campaigns. Obviously, the bailouts of 08-09 saw a Tea Party reaction, and then the spending cuts in Washington and had a profound impact. I'm not sure if we're going to see. What do you think? Do you think this is going to feature into campaign trail rhetoric this time around in a real way, that this is going to drive voters to turn out, or is it probably going to be pushed to 2024 and beyond?
I don't think so. I don't think this is a big conversation piece for November. This isn't like the financial crisis where it was a man-made crisis and there were fingers being pointed about who caused the crisis and then also got some help. Here, no one caused it. Everyone needs help. We're all in this together, and these federal programs are really just having the federal government borrow on our behalf and get us the money. So I don't think that's a big campaign conversation. And I certainly don't think anyone's going to run for president promising to balance the budget or lower the future debt. So it's a conversation for years past 2020.
Yeah, for sure. Douglas Holtz-Eakin, thanks so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.